Welcome. In this next session, we'll be hearing from 4 ODs who understand the value of clear and consistent communication. It sounds easier than it is. On today's panel are Dr. Jennifer Chinn, who graduated 5 years ago from UMSL College of Optometry and joined her father in practice in San Diego, California. Dr. Laurie Sorrenson is from Austin, Texas, where she runs a large 7 OD practice. Dr. Selina McGee has a single doctor practice in Edmond, Oklahoma. And Dr. Hoscheit has been a private practice owner as well as an industry and practice management consultant. Welcome to you all. Dr. Sorrenson, I'm going to turn this over to you because we had a conversation where you had said that you wanted to talk about something outside of your comfort zone, and we felt like making the undiscussable communication topics discussable was fit that bill. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so Marjolaine asked me which panel I wanted to be on, and one of the panels she asked me about was culture. She knows, she's helped me write a lot of articles about culture, and it's definitely something I talk about often. But then she talked about communication. I went, well, that is not something, I do talk about it some, but I don't think it's my strongest suit, but it is something that I work really, really hard at becoming better at. I read lots of books, and I listen to TED Talks, and I listen to videos, and I do a lot of different things to try to become better at it. So to be honest with you, I think I got on this panel so I could learn from the other ones and become better. So I think we were going to ask Dr. McGee, why did you want to be on this panel, or why did you choose to get on this panel?
Sure. So, communication, I always go back to this quote, and George Bernard Shaw said it, the illusion that communication takes place is typically the problem, right? And so we think it happens, and on our end, it goes well, and on the receiving end, it does not go as well. And so certainly to Laurie's point, this is a lifelong skill. Some people maybe are more natural at it, but truthfully, we have to work at this. And then you can't just work at it, you have to practice it every day. And we practice it with our patients, we practice it with our team that we're working with. I'm doing virtual stuff with my kids right now. So a couple of just key points that has really helped me in exploring this that I wanted to be able to share, and why I wanted to be on the panel, is I have really dug into something called DISC and personality types. And there's lots of different personality styles, but communication is one of those that is really key with DISC, because to really simplify it just for our purposes, because we don't have a lot of time to talk about it, but I think of it like doers, talkers, thinkers, and feelers. And so before I have any conversation with a team member, or even when I have conversations with my patients, I'm looking at body language, I'm looking at how they answer questions, I'm looking at how they want to be communicated with, and then we study that with our team members. So before I have a one-on-one with a team member, I know, okay, this person is a talker. So I need to have a little conversation beforehand before we dive into the crux of the conversation. So that's one pearl that I wanted to be able to share. And, we'll get into some other stuff, but that was a big one. I would love to hear, Dr. Chinn has a unique experience she probably was with her father in practice before she became an optometrist. So that's interesting to me, because people, probably saw you as one way, and now you're communicating in a different way. I would love to hear how you went through that, and how you did that with patients and team alike.
Yes, that is a great question, and a difficult one. Communication, like we've all been saying, is a difficult topic, and like Dr. McGee was saying, is a lifelong learning process. So for me, definitely growing up in the practice, a lot of the team members and staff members that work for my dad have been with him for a long time. So I kind of grew up in the practice, of course, and actually a lot of the team members are around my age. So before I became a doctor, we used to spend time together, go out to eat, get some drinks together. So we had a very personal relationship outside of the practice. And when I came in as a doctor, it was a totally different experience. So I had to learn to be a little bit more professional. And it was almost like starting from scratch to try to build a new relationship with them as a doctor and kind of display my skills, and also kind of letting them know the education that I have, the background that I have, and what I want to do as a doctor, what I want to achieve and accomplish. So it was definitely a learning experience, and I'm still learning to this day. But it's been fun. It's been a good process, I think. It's been an interesting process for me to grow as an optometrist and a practice owner. I'm definitely interested to hear from Dr. Hoscheit, who is somebody who's definitely been in the industry and has been consulting for lots of practices. I want to know personally, what are some big communication failures or errors that most doctors tend to make?
Thanks, Dr. Chinn. Again, I just really am so excited about the transition that you made, because we do see that a lot. And the fact that there was a generational difference led me about 3 years ago to become a certified generational expert, because I love communication. And Dr. McGee was right. You find a tool that you can connect with, and you learn it, and then you practice it, and you continue to grow in your own knowledge. And so this is a perfect example of a workplace now that often has 2 and 3, sometimes 4 generations. And so learning how to communicate generationally has become important. But I'm kind of like Dr. McGee. I was first introduced in the 90s with the Myers-Briggs. And I have since come to realize how much of the success that we had as a practice with patients and building a team was because of that. And so to answer your question is that I don't think that enough owners, practice owners and practice leaders have found that tool yet and invested the time to grow their own knowledge and then to consistently use it with their team. When you think about overhead on the cost of turnover, they say it's 125% of the cost of a salary whenever you have an employee turnover. But if we use these tools that are available, we can use it for recruiting, hiring, training, team building, and that little bit of investment that we made in that communication tool just trickles down to the bottom line and is a net positive. I use the example of how I'm a big picture person, I'm an idea person, and because my team understood that, I was hiring for detailed people and people who execute. And every once in a while it didn't work. I would be standing at the nurse's station talking to my clinic manager saying, I think we might want XYZ piece of equipment. 2 days later, it would show up. So I'm the idea person thinking out loud, and she's the executor, and she made it happen. And I love the disc. I think it's a wonderful, easy to use tool. My new favorite though is something called the Team Building Kit, KIT, for knowledge, insight, and tools. And it is really easy to learn. And I use it a lot when I go into practices that are having issues where the team just isn't gelling. You know, people are either in the wrong seat or they're taking everything too personally. We can use it to create working agreements, and a lot of practices do use it for hiring and training tool as well. So the 2 mistakes: find a tool and use it consistently. And along those lines, we've heard what a couple tools are that people use. Dr. Sorrenson, is there a communication book or tool that you've used in your practice?
So we've done something similar. I use Joyce Littauer's personality profiling. Talk about simple. It's extremely easy to explain it to the staff. So we use that one. It's exactly what you said. Would you say? You said acting, thinking. I forgot what did you say? Acting,
knowledge,
thinking?
Insight, and the team building.
Well, I think, but Selina said for her 4, it was
the talkers, the doers, thinkers, and feelers.
Perfect, right? And so we have powerful, playful, perfect, peaceful. It's the same. It's basically the exact same. They're all kind of, a lot of them are very similar in concept. So we do that. We also hired a company called Culture Index. So it's something like that. It's a little bit more scientific. It talks a little bit more about how to hire somebody for a specific position, because you need an optician that's a little bit more outgoing, maybe a little bit more independent versus a team player. So that's helped us a lot. So I definitely use those tools, and it's in our vernacular in our practice. She's a powerful, she's a perfect, she's a playful, she's a peaceful. and when we're talking about patients or we're talking about staff. So we definitely, it sounds like we're all kind of doing some similar stuff there. One thing that I did quite a few years ago that I actually lecture on some, that I found very helpful, is I forgot where I stole it from, but it was when you're dealing with a conversation you're about to have, use what they called the what, why, and forward focused question. I'm talking to you about an issue. What's the problem? Be very clear. Don't, make it all pretty and all that. Tell them exactly what the problem is. Tell them why it's a problem. And that's my biggest problem with my personality is, to me, duh, you already know why it is, because hello, you're late. You should know why you're late, right? I mean, why that's a problem, but no, you need to tell them why. And then there's the forward focused question. I had, and I'm not going to tell you the details because it's pretty intense, but I had a problem with one of my employees. And so it was going to be a tough conversation. And so I said, what was the problem? I heard that he was upset with me about something and why that upset me. I said, help me, and this is the forward focus, help me understand. And help me understand was, I think it's 3 magic words for me for really difficult situations. So if I had a little like tidbit, it's remember, does this situation say, help me understand? And did you tell them why? Would be 2 of my big like points, because that's what I have to remind myself of all the time.
Laurie, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think one of the pearls of communication is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And those 3 magic words came into my life a few years ago. And I am so glad you brought that up as a tool for this conversation.
Well, and it makes it much less defensive, right? Because these really hard conversations and the difficult conversations, like that's the first thing, is the defenses go up and then emotions get high and then it derails very quickly. And so when you can say those words, help me understand, tell me more about that experience, then you really take the emotion out of it in some ways. And you also make it, less personal, right? So whatever you're talking about, like Dr. Sorrenson said, the what, here's the problem, you're late every day. That's not you're a bad person. It's the act is you're late every day. And so that really makes, it's really subtle things, but they make mounds of difference.
So I want to give credit to the person who I talked through this conversation before I had it with, Bethany Fishbein. She's a consultant at Power Practice. And seriously, one of the most brilliant people to talk to about how to engage other people and how to have conversations. And she's the one that said, help me understand. Because I was having this conversation, it was going to be a tough one, this conversation in my head. And I was mad, I was hurt, I was upset. And I will tell you, it was one of the best conversations I've ever had with an employee. It went so well, and I had witnesses, so it wasn't just me that thought that. So, that's why I have decided those are 3 very magic words, because it really was going to be the most tough conversation I've ever had with an employee in my entire life, and it went really well. So Jen, what are you doing? Dr. Chinn?
So we do a combination of some of the things and tools that you guys talked about already. And then I also definitely, when it comes to me and I'm having one-on-ones with some of my team members, or just when I have to do team meetings, I definitely think about different processes of communication. So for me, coming into the practice as a new doctor and just having a different like we were talking about, generation gap, right, between my father, who's definitely been a seasoned optometrist, and then me, who's younger. Of course, when I have new ideas or new things that I want to implement into the practice, it's difficult. There's always denial of, okay, who is this person that's new? Like, she's not experienced enough. I'm not really going to listen to her. We have a more senior doctor that we should listen to, right? And then there's a lot of resistance. So definitely a lot of things that you guys were talking about, taking a step back and listening to some of the concerns that the team members have has always been really helpful for me. And then understanding that how I communicate to them, like we were saying, it has to be received correctly. So it's all about how they perceive what you're seeing. It's not just about you getting whatever your ideas are out to the people. So those are the tools that I'm using, and definitely learning a lot from you 3 as well.
You picked up on something very early that in practice consulting I don't see all the time, and that it's not top down when you want change, it's bottom up. And don't ask a question you don't know the answer to, or help facilitate. And that whatever the issue is at the front desk, the optical, the clinic, the staff is going to probably get to the same place you want, but if you pose the challenge to them and give them the opportunity to solve it, I can see you smiling and your eyes, your head's nodding. It's like, yeah, it really does work that way.
Definitely.
I think that one other thought I had too, and it's what I tell, and I don't think this, so my son works with me too, Dr. Chinn, and he's 31. So we have the whole generational thing. One of my employees changed his diaper when he was a baby that still works for me. So he talks about that all the time. But something that I've had that's hard to grasp, I think, when you're first starting out, is that you also need to be the CRO, the Chief Reminding Officer. You have to say the same thing over and over. And I don't mean it because they don't get it, but it's to become part of your culture. You have to say it, and you have to say it now. You have to say it tomorrow. You have to say it by email. You have to say it by signs. You have to say it by, WhatsApp. You have to repeat yourself over and over and over for it to become part of your culture and for people to get it and understand it and know that you mean it, I think, is part of it. So I think that's another thing is I know some people say you can say something too many times. I know I tend to think I can say it once and it's going to be done. So I think for me, it's just the opposite. I even write myself notes when I'm implementing something new, remind, and I'll put that on my computer. And the first day, I'll do it every day for a little while and then see how it goes. And then I might go every 2 or 3 days, then once a week. You just can't, I don't think you can communicate enough when you're trying to especially implement something new or do something slightly different with your culture or a system.
Yeah, and Dr. Hoscheit might be able to speak to this as well, but I've never had an employee or anyone that I've worked with or done any kind of survey that said, I was over communicated with. I don't think any of us have ever heard that.
You're absolutely right, because when you study patient retention of information that they have heard from their doctors, that it might be a dry eye patient you're treating or a glaucoma patient, at best, that patient's going to retain 67% of what you said. So the idea of now taking that and sending a follow-up email with instructions, or using your patient engagement solution to send some sort of follow-up or a YouTube link or something, is so important that repeating those changes and those instructions to our employees extends to our patients as well. And how many times you maybe had that dry eye patient come back and you told them exactly what to do. Maybe you even wrote it down, but you're going to go over it one more time. So the consistency applies to our teams and to our patients as well. There's no question about that.
And it's interesting too, you can use the same tools with your patients, because patients, when they're communicated with in a way that they want to be heard and what they want to hear, when you can have someone that, I'm a big picture, I'm a D, I'm a doer. And so those people don't want details. And so when you go into 50 details about their glasses prescription or their dry eye treatment, they've tuned you out in the first 2 seconds. They've already moved on to something else. And so even your best intentions can go, awry because they didn't get the information that they needed in a way they needed to hear it. And so this does definitely translate to our patient care and being able to educate them, and so that they have a good experience as well. Like, they can leave the office. I always think of my patients being able to have a wow, and I want them to be able to say, that I really like that doctor. I really clicked with her. But we're only going to click with the people that we intentionally try to do that with, right? And so, not everybody's a D. So I have to really step back and slow down on the other people. But those tools you can definitely use in the exam room.
Dr. McGee, earlier you mentioned separating a situation and not making it personal. And sometimes I can recall a favorite situation where sometimes there are patients who are late all the time, and the staff who are not like that, they're not J's, using the Myers-Briggs vernacular, and they think it's personal, like they don't respect the doctor, they don't respect the practice. And then there's the patient who comes 15 minutes early all the time, and the staff gets bamboozled because they think then they are supposed to try to work them in. And you can use the tool and say, no, this person who's late all the time, they're not late until they get there. The party doesn't start until they get there. And that lady who comes 15 minutes early doesn't intend for you to work her in early. She's late if she's not there 15 minutes early. So we step back and we take something that was maybe felt like disrespect and depersonalize and say, here's what's going on with the situation, using a communication tool that the team understands. So, and that's also a gender thing. Women tend to personalize things more than men. They can have a huge disagreement, shake hands and go play golf. Women, we're not so easy with that. So that's a good reminder for us as well.
So Dr. Chinn, I got a question for you. Did your communication with your dad, did you have to change the way you communicate either at the office or generally when you came on as a doctor?
Yes, 100%. I think it's still a learning process because, I mean, your family. So there are certain ways and even body language that how you communicate with family. You feel more relaxed, more casual, and you may feel that you can be a little bit more open. And I definitely have to reserve myself a little bit more and just the things that we talk about in the office. So we have we're starting to set clear boundaries of what we can talk about, what we don't talk about in the office. But it's still difficult sometimes. Sometimes there are things that come up and it has to be handled with. But it has definitely been an interesting learning process and we're still going through it.
In addition to the boundaries, have there been a couple tips or pearls? Because I can think of 5 people I could send an email to right now who would love to have a conversation with you and learn from this.
Definitely just taking the time to set apart time and actually talk about things outside of the office. I think in the beginning, that was a huge thing that we were just having all the conversations in the office. Even if we closed the door and we were in the exam room by ourselves, talking about things, it's different when you're in that environment and other people may be able to overhear what you're saying. So we set time outside of the practice to kind of talk about things, get coffee and sit down about, okay, what are our strategies? How are we going to convey this message to the team? What should we do about certain issues? That has been the biggest helpful tip that I could say has been great for us. Other than that, I'm not sure. It's still a learning process for me. So great question though.
Do you have any other doctors with you, Dr. Chinn?
It's just us two.
Yeah. So basically you're having a doctor meeting outside of the rest of the staff. And I think that's important for communication. It's something that we've missed. We used to do weekly doctor meetings and we haven't been because of the COVID crisis. We're just getting ready to start doing them once a week again. We've done like 2 or 3 over the last 6 months, which really stinks. We would have had, 16 or 17. And I can tell we're not all on the exact same page about things right now. And sometimes communication is, yeah, we could get better at it, but it's also doing it. Just do it, right? I mean, sometimes it's like bad communication can be better than no communication. You can see that. I actually just read a book about that as far as management and productivity of employees. Employees that get negative, get a lot of critical comments all the time are actually more productive than the ones who are ignored. Now, of course, the ones where get all the positive comments it's seriously, it's like 15 times the negative. It's this huge, crazy number, but the negative was 3 times more than being ignored. So the worst thing you can do is not communicate.
Well, and you bring up a good point too. I hear a lot of doctors like, I just don't want to take time out of clinic to have meetings. It's non-productive. It's not clinic time. I'm not generating any money. But that to me is a huge mistake, because on the back end of that, when you don't have good communication with your team, then the wheels just fall off the bus, so to speak. And so we have set weekly meetings with the entire team that we close for an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, depending on what we're doing, where we have no interruptions. Patients know that we're having a team meeting. And so that has been a huge turning point in our practice when we started making that mandatory, here's what's expected. And oh, by the way, it's not just show up and have lunch and like everybody talk. There's an agenda. I expect you to have, done your homework before you get there so that it's productive for our time there. But those pieces that sometimes feel like they're not time well spent are hugely time well spent.
I definitely agree with that. I think when previously, when my dad had the practice, I think because he's a male and most of his employees have been female, he didn't have very many office meetings or check-ins with them. And I think as a male, he just that's how it is, right? We're a little bit more emotional. We take things more personally, just like Dr. Hoscheit was saying that, we need to check in a little bit more often. And since I came into the practice, that was one of the things I started to implement. And at first, again, there was a lot of resistance, but now we're kind of in a flow, and we do have weekly meetings as well. And it's a great time for us to check in with the team members and the staff, because there's a lot of things that happen that we don't even know about as doctors when we're behind the closed doors with the patients. We don't know what's going on the phone, who might have walked in. And I think it's a great time for them to just kind of explain what's been going on during the week, or maybe some stressors that have been affecting their personal lives too, or just their emotional status, and understand where they're coming from sometimes. And that's been great too. So I definitely agree with Dr. McGee that that is a huge thing that has been helpful for our practice too, is communicating with the staff and allowing them to talk about it and just checking in every week. I think that's a major, major thing.
Is there a boundary there? I'm hearing sort of, maternal kinds of murmurings and friendly kinds of murmurings, but, how do you achieve that relationship in terms of communication and still kind of, especially you, Dr. Chinn, when you came in, as sort of former friend and now owner, can you be friends with the staff?
I think you can, definitely. We definitely still reminisce about different things. We do spend time at restaurants, and we still go out and do things together, but there is a clear boundary of certain things that we do talk about. But I think it's still a learning process. Again, it's harder because the staff members are all around my age. So I think it's great in one aspect because I relate to them really well, right? My father's a little bit more senior, so he may not be in the same generation, but at the same time, because I relate, sometimes there are some conversations that I overhear that I'm like, I should maybe step away from this. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting environment to be a part of.
I think it might be more of an exception to be friends. I always say be friendly, maybe not friends. Dr. Chinn is in a unique situation. I actually worked with my best friend for years, but we had some real hard and fast rules, Dr. Chinn, what could be said in the office versus out of the office. And we kind of kept each other in check. That accountability is certainly important.
Dr. Sorrenson, are you ever mom?
Yeah, so I can hear Eric talking to patients in the next room from my office, and I hear the word mom relatively often. So most of the time he refers to me as Dr. Sorrenson, and I refer to him as Dr. Hammond in front of the staff. But my son and I have a very, what's the right word? We joke around a lot and tease each other a lot, him more than me, but that's just kind of part of our relationship. And he can't help himself. He still does it at work. And so every now and then I've had a conversation with I think that was probably a little inappropriate. So let's bring it back a little bit. But it's kind of his relationship he has with the rest of the staff. And he had a ways to go, Dr. Chinn, with getting them, because they changed his diapers, right? So how does he create this respect and where they will listen to him? I got to tell you, he's done a great job. He's been there. This is his 3rd year. And more than anything, he worked harder than anybody else. He's the last one to leave. He goes up in the optical and he helps disinfect and put the frames back on the board. He answers the phone. He does the weave text messages. He makes appointments. He calls patients. He does all kinds of things. He does his own prelims when everybody's busy. He does his own contact lens dispenses when everybody's busy. He's the only one that does all that. Nobody else does that. I sure heck don't. I don't know how. And so he really earned that respect. And so now he can be a little bit more forceful about, being in charge, but he also knows it's not about being in charge. It's about, I'm here to help and make things better. And he's done a really, really good job. But our communication, I'm not sure I'd put it up as the pedestal, the one that you should be always matching.
But I love to hear laughter in practices. I think that's a great measure of success. I would go from exam room to exam room. If I didn't hear a little chuckling, I knew something was wrong. So good for you.
Right.
So our weekly meetings, because we have a lot of people, in one meeting we could have, between 40 and 50 people, which is why we're not doing them right now. But almost every single week we did a team building exercise. Because with that many people, you can't have a strategic meeting. That's way too many people for a strategic meeting. So it was mostly for fun and social, to be honest. We would eat lunch and we took turns and somebody was in charge of having fun. And a lot of times it was about communication stuff, though. It would be, what's your favorite movie? And so you go around the room, or we'd even put in all our favorite movies and we'd say it and we'd guess whose it was or something like that. So we really tried to make the fun and the laughter as part of it. Like I said, you can't have a strategic meeting with 45 people. That's impossible. So we would break down in smaller teams once a month and do strategic meetings.
Well, and you bring up a good point too. We want our team, we spend as much time with our team as we do our own families, right? And so if we can't connect with them, which is what communication is all about, if we don't know them on a somewhat of a personal level. And so I think it's hugely important to do those kinds of activities. And that's how we open our meeting. Last week, I think we did, what was your favorite sandwiches and why? What would you take to a deserted island? Those are the kinds of questions that we open our meetings with. They're super fun. My office manager comes up with those, but everybody laughs, and you can actually feel like this comes down. And so it's great. And so we do have to touch personal and connect with our team. I mean, I think of myself, because it's me and I have 10 women that work with me, but I think of myself as a coach. And so, I'm helping you to develop, whoever it is that you want to be and whatever it is that you want to accomplish. And the way that we do that is through good communication. And yes, there will be hard conversations, but I will be on the other side of that. This is not meant to be hurtful in any way. It's meant to, I'm not going to set a goal for you that you don't want to set for yourself. So that's really important too, is finding out, what drives them, and then you're able to connect and help them through that. So some of those hard conversations aren't that hard anymore, because it's a development and it's coaching.
That's great. Let's wrap up by having you each say, and Dr. Sorrenson will put you on the spot because you already gave this answer, your best strategy for communication. So you need to come up with another answer other than help me understand. So,
why and forward-focused question, with forward-focused questions sometimes being help me understand, but can also be, how can I help you get to work on time? How can I help you resolve whatever is going on here? Like, right now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm having a lot of anxiety issues with my staff. People who've had anxiety in the past, and some people who have not had anxiety in the past are having severe anxiety problems. And so sometimes it's that this is a real issue. We need to fix it. What can I do to help this happen for you? And we're actually having quite a few of those conversations right now, unfortunately. Plus, we're not getting to have the fun. We're not having the big 45-person meetings where we act stupid and do all kinds of dumb things. And I don't have, it's so much. I do a lot of surprise things, by the way. Like Dairy Queen blizzards show up. Last week we did an icy truck. This local business come in and do ices. I've given them gift cards to the local coffee shop. I've done just like stuff just to try to make them know that, we're trying to have fun. But right now, to be real honest with you, work's not as much fun as it used to be. It's not even, wearing a mask all day sucks. And so it's hard on them. So that would be it. Why forward focused question, and remember, help me understand.
Dr. Chinn?
I would say, besides those things and all of the tips and tools and resources that everybody has already talked about, is just take the time to check in with your team members and check in with yourself too. I think if you don't have a great idea of where everybody is emotionally standing or things they may be dealing with, it's hard for you to understand what may be going on, why they're maybe not as productive, why they may be showing up late. So just taking the time to actually check in is really important too.
Dr. McGee?
Sure. So my biggest one is, it takes a long time to slow down. And what I mean by that is, I have gotten in situations in the past when someone would ask me a question and I would directly answer it. And all that does is put a Band-Aid on the problem, right? And now you become the machine gun of answering questions, and you greatly limit your team in what they're able to accomplish, because they know the answer. They may know it better than we do. They just need permission to do that. And so I really work on questions and how to ask proper questions instead of just let's have a conversation. I want to dig deeper. And so my biggest pearl is when you're having a conversation, okay, think through your head, is this the surface problem or what's really the actual issue, and get to that and slow down. And if you're like me and you're super fast and you're doing all these things at all the same time, you have to really practice that. But it saves so much time on the back end. And it empowers your staff instead of them completely relying on you for all the answers.
Those are really great tips, especially for all the the type A personalities. It is faster to bark out the order, essentially. Dr. Hoscheit?
Dr. McGee just inspired me to take a nice big deep cleansing breath. So thank you. It helped me slow down. I think I'm going to answer this, Marjolaine, from a consultant's point of view, and that I think it's important as a consultant, I assess readiness. A lot of folks will say, I've done consulting and it never works. And it's because they're looking for that one-time, quick, let's get the consultant in, fix the problem, and move on. And in your opening remarks, you mentioned consistency. So I think that if we are wanting to learn to communicate better with outside help with a consultant, it needs to be a long-term commitment. It's here's what we're going to do, and maybe 2 or 3 meetings, touching in every 30 days or so, setting some goals, and practices that aren't prepared for a little bit longer term commitment probably aren't ready for consultancy. I think consultants can be very helpful, but I also think you've got to match the readiness of the particular leader with what the practice consulting can deliver. But I also do not necessarily want to build practices that are dependent on consultants. I don't think that that's healthy either. So finding that readiness quotient is very important.
I feel like I'm going to want to listen to this webinar about 4 times because there's so many layers of it and it applies to so many people. And I think, you can listen to it and say, well, this is staff related, but I can also apply this to, conversations with vendors, or I can also apply this to, conversations with the kids and things like that. So really fabulous tips. And thank you all so much for being part of this.
Thank you. Appreciate the invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Always good.